Good evening, everybody. We'll call this meeting of the Delta Township Board to order. For the board members and guests, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Trustee Mojica.
Here.
Trustee Cascarella.
Present.
Trustee Brewer.
Present.
Trustee Bowen.
Here.
Treasurer Fedewa.
Here.
Clerk Clark is present. Supervisor Fletcher.
Here.
You have quorum.
Thank you very much. We have the agenda before us. If there's no additions or deletions, a motion to approve. Andrea.
I do have a requested addition to the agenda. I believe this would be, just for our discussion under committee of the whole. I'd like to have a discussion about a potential review of our township sign ordinance.
The sign you said?
Yes.
Any objections to that? If none, then a motion to approve as amended would be in order.
So moved.
Moved and supported. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. We have a public hearing for a noise waiver request for Renee Kennedy's 60th birthday celebration, and the manager's office recommends that the township board approve this request for Saturday, July 24th from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. for the purposes of the birthday celebration. So we will open the public hearing at this time. Is there anybody here in the audience who would like to speak on this event, either for or against? Now is your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one coming forward, we'll close the public hearing. What's the pleasure of the board on the item itself? I think I saw Fonda first, Fonda then Mary.
I move that the Delta Township Board approve the request by Renee Kennedy for a waiver of the noise ordinance between the hours of 6 p.m. and 11 p.m. on Saturday, July 24th, 2021, for the purpose of holding a 60th birthday celebration, which will include amplified music.
And Mary supports. Mary supports. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Under communications, you have two items. One, a letter from Eaton County to tell us that their 911 phone upgrades have all taken place. So that's great news to have that updated modern equipment. And then a letter from AT&T with their annual report that they must do to report on their Uber. AT&T Ubers, I think they call that. Public comment now for items not on the agenda. Anybody here in the audience this evening who would like to speak on any topic that's not on the agenda? Now is your opportunity to do so. Just state your name and your address for the record, sir.
Thank you. My name is Joshua Covert. I'm an attorney. My office is in 1129 North Washington, downtown Lansing, Old Town, I guess. I represent a local resident of Delta Township that is interested in cannabis businesses. He's going through the pre-qualification stage right now, and he's working with my law firm to do so. I've represented cannabis businesses all throughout the state and worked with cities, townships, villages to create ordinances all across the state of Michigan. Last I knew, I looked up, it was, I think, January of 2019, Delta Township opted out of adult use marijuana. And so it's been a good, over 2 years since then, and a lot has changed. And something I want to just bring up, that the administrative rules have been finalized for approximately 1 year now through the state of Michigan. So all of the rules the township would need to put an ordinance in place is all out there, and it's been out for about a year now. And cities that allow retail establishments, cities, townships, villages, have all been receiving the first check for having these establishments. And that's from a share of the taxes that are generated statewide. Last year, I believe each retail establishment, they cut a check for $79,000 to each municipality. So that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up. My client is a resident. He wants to grow, process, and possibly do engage in the retail sale of cannabis. That would be what we call a vertically integrated or stacked facility. And that certainly provides competitive business advantages to someone doing so. And that's what we want to talk about, and maybe put it on the agenda at some point, or you guys could have a discussion when you see appropriate to maybe re-engage in that discussion to see if that's appropriate for the township. I do believe it's a way to create jobs, revenue through the tax sharing, as well as property taxes generally will go up when we see a successful cannabis business invest into the building, the property, et cetera. So that's just what I was here today to talk about. And again, it is a resident that I represent, and he does have property in mind as well. And that's something we could talk about, but it does take your permission, essentially. You have to create the ordinance allowing that. And so that's what we're here doing, asking for permission essentially, and to start that discussion and see if it's appropriate. Again, I work with the Michigan Cannabis Lawyers. It's my law firm. I started it up about 4.5 years ago, and we're right down in Lansing. So if anybody has any questions or wants to talk about that, or would like me to come back and present at some point, that's something we would love to do. We want to be a part of the community and contribute. That's it. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, well, thank you. We appreciate you being here, and I do agree with you. It's been a while since we passed our ordinance, and a lot has changed in terms of fleshing out the regulation around that and seeing how it gets rolled out. So we will have to, as a board, see if there's any desire to have a discussion to reconsider that, or if we want to leave things as is, so that would be something in the future that we would deal with.
Certainly. Thank you very much.
Okay. Anybody else in the audience would like to speak on a topic not on the agenda this evening? Anybody? Okay, we will move forward then with our agenda now. Now we're on the consent agenda. What's the pleasure of the board on items this evening on our consent agenda? Karen?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there support? There is indeed support. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on approving our consent agenda this evening?
Trustee Monica,
Yes.
trustee Cascarilla,
That was trustee Bowen that seconded.
trustee Bowen,
Yes.
trustee Cascarilla,
Yes.
trustee Brewer,
Yes.
treasurer Fedewa,
Yes.
clerk Clark is yes, supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now we move to item unfinished business items, and the item number 7, case number 52107, the special land use permit request for the outdoor commercial recreation facility, drive-in theater. At our last meeting, it was presented, a motion was made to approve, and then that was tabled until this meeting. So we now have back before us the original motion, which is a motion by trustee Bowen to approve the special land use permit. So we will return to that debate discussion. And
There must be a motion to take it off the table first.
Mhm.
even if it was specifically referred to a specific agenda? Okay.
Then Supervisor Fletcher, I move that we take item number 7 off the table for discussion.
Is there support?
Support.
There is support. Any discussion on that? I don't know if that's a debatable motion or not.
Not on that, sorry.
Right. We'll get to that. So
Yeah.
this is just on take it off the table. I don't think it's debatable. All those in favor of removing it from the table, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Okay, now we have the original motion before us, which was a motion by trustee Bowen to approve the special land use permit. And first would trustee Bowen, since you made the motion, would you like to kick off the new discussion by speaking to your motion?
Well, I'd like to say that I'm glad that we have the full board here this evening to discuss this. The reason that I moved to grant the special land permit is because it was approved and recommended by the Planning Commission, because it is a really unique business model that could bring in new people and new revenue to the township. And because I think that we want to support our small businesses and our entrepreneurs, especially our Black business owners, and encourage them from the board. Thank you.
And trustee Cascarelli, you had questions? Or
Yeah, I don't believe we have the applicant here. Is that correct? Oh,
I'm here on behalf of the co-owner.
oh, okay, great. Yeah, if you don't mind, my sincere apologies. I was not able to be here at our meeting last week, so I missed a lot of, I missed the presentation and in that discussion, but just interested in hearing, and I believe going through kind of the records from this request. The plan is to just have the drive-in movie services temporarily as a, and I may have misunderstood this, but just kind of bridge funding.
It was supposed to be the first source of revenue. My name is Kristen Kirsch. I am the co-owner of Greenwood District Studios. Thank you. It was supposed to be our initial source of revenue, hopefully, and that would occur in the summer months and maybe into the fall, depending on weather.
Okay. And I know there were some concerns that were raised from neighbors in the residential area that abuts the property. And so was there a response about, I guess I wasn't sure from what I went through if that's been resolved, concerns about light spray and things of that nature from.
One of the concerns that were reported to me is the glare from the projection from the screen. And the movie is going to be seen directly on the wall, and the type of paint that's being used, the glare would not be an issue. The other thing was the neighbors and potentially putting up some trees, which could be discussed. Our overall goal is to put a perimeter fence around the property, but with a cost of $160,000, that's just not in the budget right now. I also know one of the other concerns was that I don't believe it was asked, but more assumed that we would be showing R-rated movies or questionable movies, and that's really not our goal. That's not our main focus, to be showing movies that would be causing a lot of controversy.
So you said that's not your, and I apologize if I'm just asking questions. So you said that's not your goal or your main purpose. Does that mean you will not show any R-rated movies?
I wouldn't say that it means that we would not, but at the last meeting, I think it was brought up of the concern of what would be shown and what might be visible to passerbys. And that wasn't the focus, to be showing racy type movies.
So if you keep open the option to show R-rated movies, what? I do have some concern because the setup that you've proposed for this, and it is very unique, and I give you a lot of credit, and I'm really quite fascinated by the opportunity it presents. But because of how you've proposed to set up the different drive-in movie screens, they would be visible to non-drive-in attendees and, to the public outside of the parking lot. And so I'm just, I guess that does raise a concern to me and what the township can do to protect residents and ensure that minors, those that should not be able to attend a movie like that, can't see it as it's being shown for others that are driving in for that purpose.
That's something that we could address moving forward in regards to specifically a rated R movie.
Is there someone from staff that can just respond to our ability to
Gary.
address that?
Multiple planning staff here tonight.
So in terms of regulating content, no, not that I can find. I did some preliminary research on Friday, called the township attorney Friday afternoon, thinking this would be an easy answer. But the question comes up, it's a First Amendment issue that would have to be heavily researched in terms of regulating content of the movies shown by the applicant. And don't forget, the other thing is that I hope it doesn't happen, but if Greenwood were to go away and you issue the special land use permit, anybody that comes in afterwards, because the special land use permit goes with the land.
To that point, Gary, my concern isn't necessarily with the township regulating content, it's with ensuring that those who are supposed to be able to view that content are.
Yeah.
And so it's more, do we have the appropriate protections in place to ensure only those that are kind of authorized to watch that
Yeah,
content
the
are
only way to
able?
do that is to provide some type of screening, fencing, whatever. The applicant has indicated that that's not available to them at the present time, maybe sometime in the future, but that would be the way to do it, is to have the perimeter of the property fenced. Will it eliminate totally the ability to see? I don't know. We'd have to take a look and how high the fence would have to be. We don't know exactly the screen height yet. I think they're still talking about that and aspect ratios and all that kind of thing. I don't think that's been determined yet. So you as a board can attach any, additional stipulations beyond what the planning commission did. If you wanted to attach perimeter fencing, you could do that, but knowing that the applicant, it may be impossible or difficult to meet that right away. Now, the applicant does have some time to implement the special land use permit. They have 2 years before it would expire. There's an opportunity to come back after that time and ask for an extension of 1 year. So it's really 3 years they have. And after that time, they have to start over. But again, they want to move forward. And so that's the dilemma.
Yeah, I don't want to delay that. So are we able to stipulate fencing if they are to show R-rated movies? Is that kind of stipulation or no? We're not?
I'd still be worried about
Content.
anything about content. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I remain opposed to this. A special land use permit is a permanent thing. And while I totally am supportive and interested in what is being planned for inside the building, my concerns are what they're proposing outside the building and whether there is intent to not show R-rated movies really doesn't matter, because the property will allow it if this special land use permit is granted, and any future owner has that power, as the current owners have that power. And I am vehemently opposed. We have an obligation for our residents. We've talked about trying to prop up the Lansing Mall, and I think creating an environment where we could be showing R-rated movies on the wall across the road is not propping up the Lansing Mall and placing it in a position of desired attendance. And nor do I think a fence of 6, 8, 10 feet tall, however tall it has to be, and I'm assuming way more than 6 feet, to block the view next to what we are trying to prepare as our and support as our downtown, our destination place, looks at all appealing or inviting. So I remain very opposed to this. I support what's happening inside. I do not support what is proposed for outside.
Thanks, Wanda.
Thank you, Ken. And I apologize for not being here last week. I had a family issue with my mother that required me to be home. But this one is near and dear to my heart because supporting a Black-owned business here in Delta Township that's trying to bring culture into our environment, that is going to have children exposed to the world of production, because they'll bring children in when they start doing more of the inside filming so that they can teach them skills that will allow them to perhaps become employable after high school. And that's a good thing. There are people such as myself, people that are Black and brown and who don't see some of these opportunities. So I applaud Greenwood District for bringing something unique and special that's going to represent and show our culture in theater, in movies. Now, well, are all of the movies R-rated? No. This theater, the movie drive-in will be open only on the weekends. And it would be great if Mr. Lewis and Kristen had millions of dollars and they could just go ahead and do the renovation on the inside and open up the inside to what's going to be absolutely spectacular in terms of a comedy theater and edit studios and all the great things they have that they desire to do. They don't have those funds. And so they've been working with grassroots organizations to get as far as they are today. And there are a lot of organizations that are coming to their help, to their rescue to help them. And I think what they're doing is trying to create a plan to get them from point A to point B. And this outside theater is one of those ways to do that. And so I don't think that we, for me, focusing on the content is like censoring. To say, you can show this and you can't show that. We don't do that to theaters that have inside movies. And I know this is outside and there could be kids driving by, but they're not gonna see anything. If you looked at the arcade games or the video games with all the violence and everything going on there, I don't think we're gonna be showing them anything, or not we, but that they will be showing them anything that they haven't seen. But it is really going to be showing them and exposing people to Black art, to Black culture primarily, and movies and actors. It's going to be so that they can see themselves that this could be me later in life. I can do this. And so I applaud them taking this step, and I absolutely support it. I don't think we should get into the censoring business. I think that I know that this is a permanent ordinance. We've done this before for other places. Let's not make this one stand out with and put so much weight on it. And I applaud the Planning Commission. They heard from people, they listened, they responded. Gary did a great job with his committee of answering the questions. And for him to bring a proposal to us to support it, that means a lot to me. That weighs heavy on me. I can't think of a time where I went against Gary and his committee, because they do the work. They ask the questions. They have that difficult conversation, which is what we're having here. But then we move forward with a change in time. And I say Delta Township is ready for this. And it would not be a good look for Delta Township to deny a minority-owned business this particular request. I don't think that's a good look. I don't think that's the Delta way. And I certainly wouldn't be proud of that. But I am proud of what they're doing. I trust Mr. Lewis and Kristen in their judgment. They know what our culture is like. They're not going to be up there putting something up there that's going to be an embarrassment to Delta Township. I really believe that. And I don't think that, as I said, and I'm sorry to belabor, I don't think that we should tie their hands and restrict them to things that's beyond their reach. Like the fencing, for example, I know that's come up. They don't own the property. They're leasing it. So what are they? They can't take the fence back when they leave. They don't own it. So it's one of those things. I'm glad that that's not in there, but I fully support this because I have personally gone there. And I had asked a couple of board colleagues to go there and try to understand it for yourself, and to do what we're all very good at, is finding solutions to a problem. And so I applaud those who took that opportunity to do that. I did that, and I walked away feeling like this is growth for Delta Township. So I'll stop gabbing, but I'm in full support.
Beth and then Mary.
I have two questions. One is for Gary. Is there any way to allow this business to go forward with this kind of thing without the special permit? Is there another avenue that we could explore?
No, not under the terms of the zoning ordinance. No, this is a specific, excuse me, listed use under outdoor recreation. So
Okay. Okay, that's unfortunate. Then my second question is for Ms. Kirsch. Thank you so much for being here this evening. You're a businesswoman. And you're in the business to make art, make movies, make people happy, but also to make make money. It's a business. You know, you have to make money to keep your business going, to make these other products. And I just wanted to ask you what your thoughts were on people sneaking in, people watching the movie from, you know, surreptitiously from somewhere else, that sort of thing. What are your concerns about who will see these outdoor films without paying for it? And what were your discussions behind the scenes about how you can prevent that?
Sure. I second what Ms. Brewer said, is that in today's culture, we are exposed to many things at all different ages. Sunday is also Kids Movie Day, which will be a focus and an opportunity for kids specifically to come and see movies geared towards them. We've had discussions around that. We plan on having security, and some of that won't be able to be prohibited, but we will do our best, and we will have security around the perimeter and tickets and a whole format for people to come in. I don't know how easy it will be to sneak in, minus if you're in the adjacent parking lot, and then we'd have someone coming over there to have those people leave as well.
Okay. So it's not something you're really concerned about, that people who don't pay to see the movies and qualify with being the age limit or whatever, if it's a PG-13, you're not as concerned that people are going to be able to circumvent that?
We're not concerned. Even right now, that building has been vacant, I believe, since 2014 when the movie theater left. It has been a dumping ground in the back. They've done spray paint and graffiti around the back. And since we've come in and put up signs and surveillance cameras, you still continue to see people. And as soon as those cars come in, we're all out the doors. And so the Eaton County Sheriff has done wonderful, the department with coming by and patrolling too, but we've made it known that we're there. And so we've very much deterred some of those things that were common over the last 7 years. So that's something that we'll address as it comes up, but no, that's not a very large concern for us at this point.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
This is for Gary. How does a non-owner of a piece of property apply for a special land use permit to change the zoning of that property?
Well, you're not changing the zoning, first of all. You're
Well, not
asking for,
changing, right?
you're asking for a special land use
Right.
permit. The owners of the mall, well, the original owners before the current owners, they signed an application as the owner. And then when they sold, we had the new owners sign an
Sign.
application.
So the owners are signing, the mall is signing for
Correct.
this.
Yes.
Thank you.
Other questions from Dennis?
I'm looking at these conditions of approval, and again, this entrepreneur doesn't own the property, and the planning commission established these conditions for approval. And we talked about some of these for those board members that were here, as far as the landscaping, and you know, that has a cost to it. And if a tree will provide some screening and mitigate some of the concerns of the neighbors, you know, I can see that. Repairing the parking lot, restriping it, I can see minimal repairing. I can't see requiring them to resurface the entire parking
That's
lot.
why it's written as it is.
Okay, and I can see striping it because those are the designated parking areas where the people coming to see the film would park. But number 5, the parking lot shall be cleaned of litter debris at the end of every night the drive-in is in operation. Do we have any such condition for any land use permit that we've ever issued?
We have it for food trucks.
Mobile food trucks? Okay. Any permanent buildings that we do that for?
Permanent buildings? No, we have it for, again, food trucks, which is an outdoor use. Every night.
And food trucks
They have
are-
to police the site,
So,
clean it up and remove food trucks.
yeah, but they're eating outside. And point of clarification, will they, people who are attending this, able to eat inside or not? Or just buy the concessions and go back out to their car?
Not eating inside.
Not eat inside. So there's a potential that they can just throw this. Is there going to be like trash containers or anything that they can do that with?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely. We'll have trash containers. We will have people, go through at the end of the night to clean up the garbage. I
yeah,
will say, just from the neighboring properties, I mean, when we come in the morning, definitely from Volunteers of America and even from Gordon's, stuff definitely flows onto our property on a regular
Yeah.
basis.
so you don't have a problem with that particular stipulation?
No.
All right, thank you.
Any other? Is that it, Karen?
No.
Okay. I guess I would just say that at the last meeting, I voiced, special land use permits, as already been stated, stays with the property. So we need to just make sure that when we grant these special land use permit, we are making sure we're protecting ourselves down the road in the future so that if there's problems that pop up, we have a means to protect ourselves and protect our residents. And I think it's exciting, to see the property redeveloped. There certainly, have support to see that abandoned building redeveloped and stuff. But if that's going to permanently be a spot for drive-in movies, we have to make sure that it's protected so that a future person, even, I take your word, I take the word for you and Mr. Lewis that you're not going to show anything inappropriate. But we need to make sure that we're protected so that nobody is going to see stuff and this business could fail within a year. Somebody else could come along that now has a special land use permit. You could end up having a drive-in who have not made any promises or commitment to this board. And then if they're showing stuff that residents are seeing, and now we're receiving complaints from the residents, we have no recourse because we did not put anything in there. I personally have no desire to censor anything that you're showing or any other movie theater is showing. What people want to see is their business. I just want to make sure that people who don't want to see it are being protected and that they don't have a chance. So, to allow it with a fencing to make sure that happens, I would have no problem. To allow a drive-in theater where all the screens could be faced away from a street, so there'd be no way for somebody to drive by or off property, look and see it, I'd be perfectly fine with. I can't grant a request for something without those types of protections. So I just can't support it how it currently is. We got to long-term protect our residents who would not, would not want to have stuff like that seen without having that protection. That's why most drive-in theaters are on like an edge of town. So they build their screens so they don't face the road so that they don't encounter that problem and don't have to deal with that. But this is a drive-in that would be right in the middle of our town center, so to speak. So we got to make sure that long-term down the road, we have the protections in place. So I can't support it as is.
I just wanted to say we have an obligation to protect citizens from things they don't want to see. I just don't agree that we have to protect people from things that they can just, drive a different way if they don't want to go past the movie theater. I think presuming to make that decision for every single person who lives in Delta Township is overstepping.
Now you're talking about nudity or sex being broadcast in your downtown.
I want to make something clear too. You said that we said we would show nothing inappropriate. That's not what I said. I said our focus wasn't rated R movies. So will I guarantee that there will never be anything racy crossing the screen? No. But the message I got from the last meeting is that that was the focus, that we were going to be showing things that, the assumption that they would be all rated R movies. So at times there might be rated R movies, but that's not the focus of what we're doing. We are trying to show movies with diversity, with culture, with things that might show up at the theater. And if they do, they're only there for a weekend. We are trying to provide inclusion and diversity in a world that needs it right now. So I appreciate everyone's time today.
Good, thanks.
I just had a question about, I think one of your concerns was the screens, the placement of the screens. Kristen, can you tell us how many screens will there be? And is there any consideration to maybe not have one that's facing the main street or something? Is there some way to assist with Ken's suggestion?
I can't answer that at this time. I know that part of it was being able to display it on the wall,
Right.
to have to be able to avoid whatever type of screen we would have to inflate or purchase to put on the outside perimeter.
When I was there visiting, Mr. Lewis showed me it was the back side of the building is where the screen was. Now, I think, is there a plan to have multiple screens?
I think there
Or
was a
just-
plan to have two.
Okay,
Potentially.
so I know one was not
Three.
facing the street. Three,
But not facing the street. I think the one that you're talking about might be the one that would be towards the
resident area, I think.
resident area, which I don't really see that as a concern, but
Right. And the other two would be one
would be
facing
out.
the parking lot and the other sort of facing the Lansing Mall.
Correct.
Is there any consideration to try so that we can try to get to a middle of the road where we could start off with one screen or limit it to the screen that's not facing the traffic? Or is that not going to produce the level of income you're expecting or desiring?
That could definitely be a discussion that we could have to start with one screen. I don't know if Mr. Lewis would be open to just doing the one screen, if that would be worth it in the long run to do that big of a production and only have one movie showing at a time, as far as what the income would be for us as well. But I could ask about that.
Well, and by doing so, then I wonder, and this would be for Gary, then that doesn't require you to do the paving of the parking lots in the
Well,
other
it still might require
areas.
that. It still might require that. Well, that parking lot is in very poor condition.
Yeah,
It's some of it's returned to gravel. So that condition of the parking lot still has to be addressed. Let me say, regardless of what you do, if there is a consensus among the board to deny this request, then they cannot bring it back for an entire year. If the desire is to give the applicant an opportunity to amend the plan and address some of the concerns, then the appropriate action would be tabling, which is an indefinite postponement, if you will, of the request, and then bring it back on the table when they've had a chance to address some of the concerns that have been raised by the board. Or, a postponement is in order to a specific date if you want to give them a deadline to do so. So
is there, Gary, a way to return it back to the planning commission to rework it with them and then bring it back? So I don't want to table it, but I'd love for it to go back to the planning if there's not support.
well, you have
go
to,
back
you
and
have
have
to
you
give the planning
guys-
commission direction and what you want to see. What specific action or what specific issue do you want the planning commission to take? They've reviewed it. They've reviewed the 3 screens. They talked about the content. They went ahead with this recommendation. Are you asking them to reverse themselves?
No, I'm asking if they she wants to go back and talk to Mr. Lewis about coming back to the planning commission with fewer than 3 screens.
Well, they can come back directly to you.
So
there's
they
not-
don't need to go
They do not
through
need to go back
the
to the planning commission.
with that. Yeah, I just would hate to see it denied if there is a way we can get to a yes somewhere along the way. Is my question. Thank you.
Question.
Yes. And then
Technical question, how big are the screens gonna be? The painted screens on the side of the building?
I don't have the answer.
You don't know?
I think that was still in question. Again, they were talking about what types of movies they're going to send, what the aspect ratio is
Oh,
going to be,
okay.
and 101 other things. So
Okay.
they haven't decided, they haven't designed it yet. So
And would the furthest cars away from the building that would be viewing the screen, I guess if the smaller the screen, the harder it is to see the farther away you are, all right?
sure.
So if you're driving down Saginaw Highway and the screen is, 9:11, the aspect ratio, whatever, I don't think the building's big enough for something like that. And so then as you've got to downsize it. And so really to try to see anything from far away is very difficult.
Yeah, we don't know yet because the size hasn't been determined
Yeah.
yet. The exact location on the specific wall hasn't really been determined. So,
Yeah.
that's part of what they can do, work out those details and then come back and
Well, to that point, do you have an idea how long that might take you to make those determinations?
I would assume within a couple of weeks at the most, we could determine that.
Okay,
But what my concern is here today is it seems like some people are set on their decisions regardless of what is done moving forward and the potential of those, so I'm anxious to, I don't know if it's better to postpone or vote today because I feel like people are very clear in their yays and nays for today. Some people.
Because their concerns supersede anything about, the size of the screen or accommodations. It's just trying to regulate content
Correct.
and not being able to do so therefore deny it. Not to put words in your mouth, right?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead, Andrea.
Yeah, I would like to comment, and I appreciate some of the comments that followed when I had my first line of questioning. I didn't have the benefit of being here last week, so I had questions. Those were the biggest issues that stood out to me. I'm fully supportive of the production studio and the efforts there. I love the idea about creating opportunities for culturally diverse movies to be shown in the drive-in theater. So I don't think it's fair to characterize any questions as wanting to regulate content. I have no interest in doing that. But just as in, with rated R movies, children aren't able to attend those movies. They cannot, they're prohibited from doing so, I think, unless a parent is there. It's no different than if we had a liquor store in the township, the expectation of residents that their children couldn't go buy alcohol. I think we have a responsibility to all residents that what's happening is in compliance with the law and regulations in place. And with the rated R movie, it's that children shouldn't be able to see the mall. Teenagers, young people frequent the mall area, and there may be people that see things that aren't of age and able to legally do that. And I think we have a responsibility for authorizing action that allows a minor to do something they're allowed to do, that there's responsibility on us. And so that's where my concern is. I have zero interest in regulating content, but movie theaters control who buys a ticket and goes in and sees that. We have no mechanism to ensure there's that compliance. And I think it would be very difficult for you, just given the setup. And that's where my concern is, not with what your intent is, but secondary ramifications of course, with the approval, if someone else should take over occupancy in this site and operate a drive-in, they may do so in a way that's even less responsible. Or that's irresponsible to those concerns. I like the comments that Trustee Burr offered to try and find a way to find some middle ground, and I'm open to that. And if there's a way to utilize the screen that's not so publicly viewable, I think that's a great option. Again, very supportive of what your intent is with the production studios. Love the idea of a drive-in option in our community, but we've got to have some way to ensure there's compliance, that young children aren't seeing something inappropriate that they shouldn't be able to view walking down the sidewalk or walking to the mall. And that's where my concern lies. And I realize this is an effort to raise revenue, to develop the production studios to what that wants to be. But I think we also need to be sensitive to the fact that we have regulations in place, and we shouldn't abandon the value of those regulations just because there's a cost to them. And we need to weigh all of that, and because the next applicant for something could say, well, we want to do this, but we can't afford to comply with all the requirements and the regulations. And that's another, we set a precedent by doing that. But I just want to say I'm open. Again, I apologize for missing the deliberations last week. I'm willing to hear, I'm open to tabling this so we can find some middle ground. I do have that concern though.
Just one more thought for Kristen is it possible to consider only playing an R-rated movie if you choose to play one on the side, that side, And that the other two areas which are exposed to people walking by or somebody who chooses to park in the Lansing Mall and peep over to show PG or less.
I
And
think that's
just
an option. I mean, we could discuss that for sure.
because I think that's probably an easier way, a middle ground. I'm always trying to find a way to make it work for you and make it work. I agree with what Andrea is saying. I agree with what's being said here. We do want to add some protections, but I think that can be accomplished by showing it on the backside only. That that's the side that's for R-rated movies, if you show them at all, and the others will be PG and under that are more public facing would be something I would throw out for you to consider.
That was my first solution. And I went until I read the planning commission minutes and the residents, that was the one thing they asked the planning commission to not do was allow any showing on the west side of the building, which would be the residential side. So our residents in that area have asked us not to do that. So that was the end of my solution.
Well, isn't that the area they're gonna put trees up or something? Wasn't that the mitigation?
Wasn't part of the concern the glare too? Is that?
Yeah, I think that can be
Sound,
mitigated.
Glare, they had a number of
And it
things.
was how many residents? Out of,
I don't know that it's specified how many.
two. Yeah. Or maybe trees or something. It just seems like it could be, Mary. I think you were looking towards that, a workaround for that, if we can work through that. But those are my suggestions. Ken, thank you.
Great. Is there any other comments or are people ready? We've devoted a lot of time to this so far. So we either have we have a motion before us or.
No, we don't. We just had a discussion. We just moved it. We don't have any.
You have a motion, don't you, if you remove it off the table and then the motion becomes before you. So we had the motion to start the discussion because we had to vote, remove
Okay.
the issue off the table. Because there was a motion that was tabled. So there's a specific motion, not a discussion on the topic. The
Right.
motion was tabled till this meeting. We just moved to take that off the table. So we have a specific motion in front of us right now.
Ken,
Yes.
can we add a sixth condition?
Conditions can always be added, yeah.
And that condition would be that any R-rated movies be shown on the backside and there be some sort of trees or something put up there.
Oh, you already have the trees, you have the stipulation. Again, you're trying to regulate content.
Not trying to regulate content,
Well,
but
you are,
screens.
because you're regulating content on a screen. So you are attempting to regulate how something can be displayed. And I have concerns, again, we can take it to the attorney about, and ask the question about First Amendment implications again, and that's going to take some time, but I am a little bit nervous again about referring to a certain rating of movie and displaying it in a certain manner.
I
restricting
agree.
it.
I totally support the amendment. How about if it says that screen is for an age group?
Again, you're referring to the rating system again.
So you can't say that
No,
that screening
again,
is only
that's
for
the
18 and up.
That's the problem that you're having is that certain.
Because I don't believe in
certain rating-
censoring either.
Yeah, so again, I don't know for sure that we have the ability or don't have the ability to do it, but it's going to take some legal research to find out.
So I would suggest if it's going to take some research, again, to maybe table it again and get that research on, can we put an age restriction on that side of the building? Or what are the options to avoid the censoring?
Right, then the other issue, who's going to observe it and regulate it each evening?
That's up to the owners to do
Well,
that.
no, but we're the enforcing agency.
Well, we have enforcement agents.
So that means you're going to have somebody here in the evenings when the movies are being displayed to make sure that the proper type of movie that you're talking about is displayed on that screen and not something else.
Well, I would hope that they wouldn't have to do that every single day. I mean, we have other ordinances that you can't park on the grass. Are they going to those houses every day? No.
We're not. But
So,
I'm just saying, you're
you can't have it
adding a
always.
layer of enforcement to this and that,
Yeah,
just throwing it out there.
I appreciate that.
I would like to move to table this and give the owners time to work with the board to alter their proposal. Because I'd rather it take a couple weeks to come to a compromise than deny it outright and make them wait another year for their special permit.
I support that.
Support.
What was our timeframe on that?
You said a couple of weeks.
That just.
So if you table it, it's indefinite. So that gives them
Yeah.
for time.
We can bring it
Tec-
back.
Technically, we did not handle the motion properly last meeting
And how was it? supposed to
because
be?
postponed has a date. We tabled with a date, which is not possible. You can postpone with a
Table it.
date or table indefinitely.
Then I move to table indefinitely to allow the owners to revise their proposal to work with us to meet our concerns, but also to allow their business model to be put together so that they can continue to exist and serve Delta Township with their
Is there
business.
support to table indefinitely?
Wait, I got a question before that. So if we do that, how does that work? How do we work with them to get across the points that we made tonight? Because we all have concerns, so I want to, how do we work with them?
They would sit down with planning department, and then I guess when they think they have something that would address the concerns that's been all voiced here tonight, then they would bring something back.
So if they come back and then we table it, can we table it again at that point, or do we?
You can keep tabling as long as you like.
I just want to make sure.
Suggest as individual board members, you can't act as a group via email. That's what we need. So, individually and without copying your colleagues, write an email. Then I can pass those on.
That was kind of I'm sorry, hold on. That was kind of what I was kind of getting to, is that I have concerns, but we have already talked them kind of right now. We talked about them last week. I didn't want to continue, with the same thing. So I was hoping that we could individually just send you, hey, here are my concerns, and then maybe you can get a consensus and say, okay, here's what I see consistently in here, and we can continue with that. I don't have a problem with that, to try to table that and come back with that. I just wanted to ensure that we could do that, and if we still didn't agree, table it again. I just wanted to make sure that was my concern right now.
Did you have a question, Fana, or were you seconding her motion to table?
I'm supporting the motion to table.
Okay, it's been moved and support to table this indefinitely. That's a non-debatable motion. So all those in favor of tabling this item indefinitely, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
One nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming this evening. We'll continue on the agenda now. We'll go to the items that was added under set and adjust, so which is a discussion on review of our sign ordinance. Trustee Casparilla.
Yes, thank you. So as many of you may be aware, I sit on our Township Sign Board of Appeals, and we had a case that came before us, a request this past week, and while it did not directly involve the legal issue that became part of our discussion, the discussion ensued. And so there was a conversation because there were some questions that arose about our sign ordinance. And it led to this discussion about a Supreme Court case, Gilbert versus Reed. And that kind of feels similar to some of our discussion today, dealt with whether or not local ordinances, sign ordinances, and I don't even know if it's strictly local, but sign ordinance regulations can regulate content on those signs, or if it has to be location, size, things of that nature. And so we had a conversation about this, and it was also shared. Some of you may be aware, but many of us on the board were not on when the ordinance was adopted. That was a new ordinance adopted by our township. 2 weeks later, this Supreme Court decision came down. So it came, and I think it makes sense to have a review of our ordinance. And then in this context, this legal context, and include legal counsel just to look at that. And there were issues that came up and questions about whether or not on some things on how we might interpret, which we don't have really, we can't decide something is or isn't something. We just have to look at the law and say, yes, it, complies or isn't. And we can't, there's not, the sign board of appeals doesn't have that flexibility. So I think clarity to ensure there's no gray areas where that we may be challenged to make that clear determination would be really helpful. The other reason I ask, I think we all were contacted by the manager at a local business who was just becoming familiar with our sign ordinance because of some signs, temporary signs and others that they had at the business. And, he attended the sign board of appeals meeting as well and raised some questions about some of the provisions in our ordinance. I'm a firm believer in, if we have ordinances, we should enforce them. And I'm also a firm believer, that ordinances should be reasonable and, not overly burdensome. And I think, I've asked that individual to kind of review our ordinance from their perspective and raise concerns. But I think looking at that too, and are all of those provisions, do we need to make some adjustments? And it seems like in addition to the legal review that we just consider some of the practicality of some of the provisions in there and whether that should be updated. It's been a number of years now. And so I just offer that and just wanted to have that discussion and see if there's support to have that review done. But I was just going to add, I know, I don't know if Dave's here. I thought he was going to, the other day, Chair. So yeah, we have staff here, Dave Olagora, who's able to just share any additional insights from our meeting. But Dave Arking, who is the chair of the Sign Board of Appeals, I thought he was also going to be here, said he'd be available to offer comment, but doesn't look like he was able to make it. So just wanted to add that.
Does anybody have any objections? Did you have any objections to have that review?
No, I think it's a good idea.
Just a clarification. So I know we amended our signing ordinance, not too long ago. But the process of the appeal process is what you're talking about, just that review?
No, the full ordinance.
So the ordinance that we've done a few years ago.
So Dave is our sign specialist. We don't do signs in the planning department. We do have certain functions that we perform under the ordinance for unified business districts and things like that. We also assist with the meetings for sign board of appeals. So the whole sign ordinance is administered through the building department. We were a part of the 2015 review of the sign ordinance and adoption of the new ordinance that time. Just after we adopted it, the Supreme Court decision came down.
Right.
So we're talking about the issue of content neutrality, that we can't look at what a sign says and then regulate it in any manner. We can regulate, like Andrea just mentioned, dimensionally and where it's located on the property and things like that, clear vision areas. That's what we can do under the Supreme Court ruling. So if you have to look at a sign to see what it says, we can't have regulations like that. And we do have regulations like that. And 90% of the communities in Michigan still have regulations like that. MML and MTA have been working on a model ordinance for 6 years. We haven't seen anything. I think one community is trying to, three communities have tried to wrestle with this. So, we'd obviously be reaching out to those communities to see what they've done to, and again, get an opinion as to whether that meets the test of content neutrality. So, we're going to have to rewrite the sign ordinance to comply with the Supreme Court decision. probably have to hire a consultant to do it. Or a specialist attorney that has done one
Well,
or more
thanks
of
for
these.
jogging my memory. I do remember we passing that ordinance and then
yep.
the Supreme Court,
Yeah.
dropped the hammer
On everybody.
on everybody. Yeah, I
Yeah,
thought there'd
I
been
mean,
more progress on
We
that.
can continue to try to enforce our ordinance, and a lot of communities are. They're just going ahead, and not enforcing the regulations they have in the books. But we just leave ourselves open to
Yeah,
court
okay.
challenges, things like that. So.
Thanks for the reminder.
Okay, well, thanks again for bringing this to our attention. I didn't hear any objections, so Brian can bring that, begin that process and then bring that back to us at a future date. We'll move down to the items of business now. Item number 8, case number 6-21-08, a final consideration for West Lansing Church of Christ special land use permit to purchase basically a house next to the property. Gary, did you have anything you wanted to add on this? If anybody have any questions on this, or are folks just ready to vote?
I don't have anything to add. I think the request is fairly straightforward. It's laid out in my staff report and then the planning commission recommendation. I'll be happy to entertain questions. We do have the applicant here this evening as well. So.
Right, thanks. Did anybody have any questions? If not, a motion.
Can you just elaborate on the special uses? Because we just had a lengthy discussion about a special use permit, and so we know that the special use permit will go with the property. And are there any concerns about if the church sells this property?
Well, if the property can be used for incidental and ancillary uses, that's the language specifically out of the zoning ordinance associated with the place of worship. So there's no longer a place of worship. And then
Could another place of worship that's located elsewhere?
If
buy it?
for some reason West Lansing Church relocates to a finer facility and
Mhm.
another church comes in behind them, yeah, they could use that property in the
But-
same manner.
What if the property was separated from the church property? This particular house?
Again, it could be those particularly, you couldn't hold worship services
Mhm.
because the ordinance is clear as to distinction between worship services and what's ancillary and incidental. So,
Okay.
so they can have picnics, they can probably have some office space, they can have administrative offices. I think one of the uses they talked about is a taping room. So those types of uses, yeah, a successor could use it for those purposes. They couldn't hold church services.
Okay, thank you.
But essentially, Gary, this removes this house from being a residential property.
Correct. It'll no longer be served as a single family residence, correct?
Mary, you got a point of information?
Which, it's not attached to Faith, it's attached to the church on the west,
Correct. Across it's
on the other
west-
side of
the
Snow.
on the other side of Powderhorn.
Powderhorn, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Just wanted to make sure, that's what I thought, but then I got the.
I was going to make a motion if there weren't any other comments. I move that the Delta Township Board approve the special land use permit request described in case number 6-21-08 for the use of the subject parcel of land identified as parcel number 040-023-200-04100 for incidental and ancillary church uses associated with the West Lansing Church of Christ located immediately to the west of the subject parcel. And the request meets the general standards for special land uses found in section 7.03 of the 2017 Delta Township zoning ordinance. The request meets the specific standards specified for places of worship in section 8.45 of the 2017 Delta Township zoning ordinance. The use is consistent with the future land use recommendations of the 2013 comprehensive plan. And for the subject parcel is adequately served by public utilities. And that the special land use permit is granted subject to the 2 stipulations in our packet.
Is there support?
Support.
There is support. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on approving the special land use permit in case 6-2108.
Trustee Cascarilla,
Yes.
trustee Mohica,
Yes.
treasurer Fedewa,
Yes.
clerk Clark is yes, trustee Bowen,
Yes.
trustee Brewer,
Yes.
supervisor Fletcher.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll move to item number 9, the east-west pathway repair east of Carrier Creek. And the engineering department recommends that we award the bid to E.T. McKenzie in the amount of $370,932.75. But we accept the value engineering proposal, which would reduce the cost to $273,354. Andrea.
I have a question for Ernie. Who did the original work on the pathway, and was there any warranty or anything like that with that, or is this just? I'm just curious.
Laux Construction built that.
Who was that?
Laux Construction.
Okay,
This would be well past any type of warranty, and this really isn't a warranty
it is.
issue. It's more of a, we got an erosion control issue,
Okay.
with movement of water through there.
And was that not anticipated when the pathway was, I mean, I was shocked with the pictures, how severe that damage is. So was that not anticipated at all with the design of the pathway through there?
Yeah, I think, this well predates my time here, but my understanding was, there was a grant in place and there was a set budget and, kind of some cost constraints.
Okay.
So I think it was more of trying to make something work with available budget, and in hindsight, controlling that water was probably a bigger deal than they realized at the time.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Oh, I was just gonna move it.
I was gonna
whenever-
say I was
yep,
gonna make a
whenever.
motion.
Mary can do it.
I move that the Delta Township Board accept the bid from E.T. McKenzie Companies for the east-west pathway repair project in the amount of $370,932.75. Further, that the township accept the value engineering proposal from E.T. McKenzie Companies, which reduces the project cost to an amount not to exceed $273,354.25. And that the township manager is hereby authorized to sign and execute an agreement for said services on behalf of Delta Township.
Is there support? And there is
Support.
support. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the bid, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Ernie. Appreciate that. Next up, we have a couple of board and commission appointments, and we have the individuals here this evening. Thank you for sitting through a meeting that's gone a little longer. We have an opening on both our EDC and on the library board, and we had a couple of applicants interested in either one of those. So I interviewed them both and offered Trevor the recommendation for Economic Development Corporation and Kelly Robertson for the library board. Would both of you like to just come to the podiums and introduce yourself to the rest of the board for a moment? Trevor will go first, and Trevor's up for the Economic Development Corporation.
Hi, board. My name is Trevor Youngquist. I use the pronouns he and his. I'm really excited to be offered this opportunity. I've lived in a lot of economically vibrant areas in the state, like Ferndale, Ann Arbor, Dearborn, and I have lived in Delta Township now for a year. I own a house here, and I'm really excited to make some roots, and I'd love to see this community continue to prosper. I'm working on a master's degree in public administration, focusing on community development and public policy. So there's a lot of carryover in between what I've seen and as part of different communities in the state, what I'm learning academically, and I'm for the opportunity. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Trevor. And Kelly, would you like to introduce yourself?
Not a public speaker, so. bear
That's
with me.
okay.
I'm Kelly Robertson. I've lived in Delta Township since 2004. I've raised my daughter here and some grandchildren, and I had an opportunity to serve on the library board, and I am looking forward to providing input to the community that I live in, and look forward to serving the library and looking at areas that it can grow or provide input.
Great, well, thank you. Well, I'll move that the aforementioned persons be appointed to the township boards and commissions, and that the clerk is hereby directed to send notification to all of these selected to inform them of their appointments. Is there support?
Support.
There is support. Any discussion? Brenda?
I just wanted to say great choices and welcome Trevor and Kelly. I love that Trevor is getting engaged in the community right out the chute. So welcome to both of you.
Any other? Dennis?
Yeah, who are the outgoing members of these two boards that created the vacancy?
The EDC has been open for a little bit. I don't know. Does anybody, do you know, Brian, who left last to create that opening? I don't remember.
We've had an
I
opening
think it
since
was,
pre-COVID.
Bob Thalen, was it, or was it? It's not Wilson.
Wilson.
Yeah. I think Thalen, but I can't remember.
That could be, I think that's ringing a bell. Could be Bob Phelan, yeah. And then Doug Drake is finishing up his tenure on the board.
Who doesn't want to stay in that position for
He
the
is he's ready to go.
Yeah, I know Doug well. All right, thank you.
Any other discussion?
I just like to make a comment, just like to say thank you for volunteering to strengthen your community, and it's residents like you that really help Delta Township thrive and grow, as you said. So I'm looking forward to meeting you and working alongside you.
Good, thanks. We'll see no other questions. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion carries. Thank you. Congratulations. And if at some point, anytime you can stop in the clerk's offices to be sworn in, and then like I mentioned, the library director will reach out to you, Kelly, and Trevor. I'm sure Colin will already reach out to you pretty quickly there to get you orientated. Continuing now to the manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor and board members. Just a few items for tonight. We are starting to receive information about the reconstruction project of I-69 from 96 to Airport Road. So I had discussed with MDOT earlier this year, at some point, likely later this summer, they will probably come to the board and give a presentation both on this project, which directly affects Delta Township, but also probably the other segment of 496 that they'll be starting next year, just for your information. So I just wanted to put that on your radar. And similar to the other 496 project, they'll have a project website and a lot of public education on those projects. So speaking about MDOT, the M43 Broadbent to Nixon has started. You'll see it. I believe that the road commission is also doing some of the neighborhoods in Dawn Haven and that right now at that time also. So there's a lot of activity over there. The Michigan Avenue project is for the most part complete. There's still some striping and some other things. Consumers is doing a natural gas pipeline project down Waverly. So if you have been down Michigan Avenue, there's still a piece right at Waverly where it's coned off and some traffic backups and whatnot, but received some good feedback on the Michigan Avenue road diet. So I'm eager once the consumers project is done and everything is punch list is done, feedback that we'll receive on that project. Just a reminder, Thursday night, we have the a Corridor Improvement Authority joint meeting with the Township Board. So that'll be in this room at 6 p.m. The registration for the Michigan Municipal League annual conference opened today. So please let us know if you're interested in attending that. And last but not least, we did receive notice today, you probably have seen it, that there was a Delta variant case in Berry County. So there haven't been that many in Michigan, but just to let you know that that was in Berry County. So that's all I have, Mr. Supervisor, but happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Can we petition to have that variant's name changed?
Yes.
Does anyone have a question for Brian? Okay, great. Thanks, Brian. Then we move down to the committee, the whole items now. And first up is the American Rescue Plan Funds discussion, Brian and Alana.
Sure.
And Courtney.
Real quick, sorry, Mr. Supervisor, if I could go back just for clarification on the tabling item. So just so everybody know that, that will remain on our agenda regardless of whether we discuss it at each meeting. So just so people are aware to see that. Yeah, so. All right, well, I will start off and just wanted to get some information and start the dialogue on the American Recovery Plan funds. And as you mentioned, both Alana and Courtney were very helpful or instrumental in pulling together all this information. So we will be receiving estimated close to $3.5 million through the program. There are some communities, counties, and large entitlement cities that have already received their money. That's why many of you have seen probably some other communities that have started discussions. As far as most townships or cities our size that do not receive the direct entitlement, a lot of them have not yet necessarily had public discussions on what they would like to do with those funds. So many of us were waiting for make sure that the guidance was somewhat finalized. There's still webinars and that type of thing going on with the MTA and MML, which we've had staff, Alana and Courtney, involved in watching that to understand these funds and what we can use them for. So just real quick, I'm not going to go word by word through our memo. But as you can see, a couple key dates, we do have to obligate the money by December 31st of 2024 and have to expend the dollars by December 31st of 2026. So just a couple considerations that I wanted to make the board aware of. As we look at spending these funds, there are a lot of other existing and potential federal and state and local assistance programs. So we don't have all those documented in this memo, but I would think that we would want to make sure that we're being careful to stay away from any overlapping programs or anything like that. There are many options for assistance. You know, at a local level, sometimes we don't always have the best documentation for the need. So just something to keep in mind is, you know, we can try to provide some information. But a lot of the items that we have listed are known needs that we have. And when you get into some kind of social assistance programs or that type of thing at the local level, we don't always have that data. Internal capacity is pretty common sense. We have the programs that we run and know how to do. So as you look at some of the other programs that might be out there, Ingham County comes to mind. They've done a lot of business assistance. They've contracted with LEAP. So anything that we don't necessarily do on a day-to-day basis would be something that we probably would look for outside assistance with. Lastly, if we do spend over $750,000 of the federal funds, we would have to do a single audit, which we did this last year with the federal funds that we had received. So I just want to run through really quick the sections that we would be eligible for and what you can spend them on, and then allow for some questions, probably technical questions. Alana and Courtney would be better able to answer on these. But the first thing is replacing public sector revenue loss. So this would essentially be a category where we could take the funds and use it for our general provision of government services. Essentially, this would be moving the funds into, you know, using it for kind of general fund purposes. The way the feds calculate or provided the equation to calculate our losses does allow us, if you look at this, we would almost be able to contribute the entire amount, or per Courtney, it's likely we could take the entire amount and use it in this category, which gives us the most flexibility in that in that way of utilizing the funds. We have already talked to our auditors about that, and they agree with the way that we have calculated those losses. So on paper, or I guess perceptionally, we pushed back some projects. We did some things to keep costs down during the pandemic year. So the losses, we actually realized we were able to kind of sustain our normal operations, but because of this, the federal equation, it does give us some flexibility in that regard. Investing in water and sewer infrastructure. I know from conversations Alana has had with other colleagues in other communities, this is something that a lot of places are focusing on. It's probably one of the number one needs of many places. Obviously, we have a lot of needs that we brought to the board over the last year or two. We have a couple potential uses in Delta listed here, but we have many, many more that we could fit under this category. I just want to make a quick note. We have a bullet point there for the solar project under the wastewater treatment plant that if that was something that the board was interested in, it probably would be a better fit under the provision of government services after we reviewed a little bit more of the guidelines for the water and sewer infrastructure. Supporting the public health response is the next one, which we do have some eligibility. Again, we do have some examples listed there. All of these would also be eligible under the provision of government services. Stuff like the roof replacement, probably again, we have the broadest stability under the just replacing government losses. Addressing the negative economic impacts caused by the public health emergency. This is where you get into some of the relief programs, whether it's for individuals or for economic development, small business grants, that type of thing. We have a couple bullet points listed about potentially expanding our EDC facade grant. I would mention that is one program we do are able to run internally. Any other type of economic development program is likely we would look for assistance. One bullet point I just want to make a note of, thank Courtney for this, rent, mortgage, and utility bill assistance. You can see there we have a very low amount of need in the community. Not saying that it's not there or people who have those needs, it's not important, but in terms of developing programs, that is good data. It doesn't mean that will stay at that level, but we're very consistent with what we've had in the past, even pre-pandemic. Serving the hardest hit communities and families. This is something that in Delta Township, we don't really have a lot of eligibility. We don't have qualified census tracts there. Provide premium pay for essential workers. This is something that we are eligible for. It's something that the board could consider for essential workers. Investing in broadband infrastructure, also something that we're eligible for. This seems to be something that when you read about it in the news, a lot of places are looking at. I don't think we have a lot of need here in Delta with the providers that we have. It's also something that Eaton County is looking at. Eaton County is receiving approximately $22 million. I think they have not made any final decisions, but I know one of the things they're looking at is an assessment of broadband countywide and potentially using some of the money to beef up broadband throughout the county. In talking to them, even that was one of the first things they said, well, Delta doesn't have a lot of need, but I wanted to make sure that we were in conversation with them to provide any type of overlap. So those are the categories. If you want more information or go in depth, Alana and Courtney can come up and dig more into that. Some of the restrictions on use have been pretty well documented. Cannot use it to deposit into pension funds, can't use it to fund debt service, legal settlements or judgments, that type of thing. So in summary, we just put together kind of a mix of projects. It's a little bit more than what the $3.5 million is, but kind of a mix of some of our needs. We do have an aerial fire apparatus that's kind of rising to the top of one of our largest needs coming up, and that the price tag on that is pretty hefty, $1.5 million. I will say I have been working with Representative Whitwer to try to have that included in the state budget. If you remember last year, we were able to get a fire engine put into the budget, and then when COVID hit, it went away. So I was hopeful for this. It's not a, certainly not any type of guarantee. So we want to try to find ways to pay for that. Ambulances our folks are running. In fact, the chief just ran out of here for a structure fire. But we know we have some ambulance replacements, and those are not cheap. We have the Carrier Creek Sewer Project that's estimated at $1.5 to $2 million. It's a very important project. I listed some small business assistance. This could be even economic development programs in general. Wastewater treatment plant solar array. This is something we mentioned, Ernie and Rick mentioned in one of their presentations about the wastewater as we rebuild the plant. If we want to make some investments in renewable energy, it's an expensive option, but we have space there, and it might be a time to start making some of that investment. I mentioned the facade improvement grants and loans, IT projects and reimbursement. We have all our new technology in this room and some of the updates that Dave has done to really beef up our IT and the fire station roof that we included. That's going to be underway here shortly. So those are some staff recommendations. It's not something that we have to necessarily be in a hurry to make any decisions on. We have time with these funds, but I know since we wanted to kind of bring you a systematic or comprehensive review of what we could use it for as more and more information gets out there, and try to avoid any confusion. Like I say, every community is kind of wrestling with this in terms of what is the best use of it. So we have a lot of needs, but wanted to make sure we brought this in front of you. And I do appreciate all the work that Alana and Courtney have put into this. So with that, Mr. Supervisor, happy to entertain questions or.
Thank you. I'm sure there will be questions. Stephanie?
Yeah, couple of questions or in comments, Brian. One of my questions, and generally, I appreciate all the work and putting it together, the list of recommendations. Couple thoughts on this. One, with the wastewater treatment plant solar array, is that not something that would be included in the SRF loan? And I thought with that, so that is not part of that whole package that.
Correct.
Okay, because I know there's the green whatever program, and I would assume the solar array would be 100% refundable if it was eligible. So you're saying that's not part of the.
That's correct. I don't know if Courtney or Ernie or Rick, because that's not part of the design, the original design of the plant or necessary components. So
Okay.
And I don't know if it is SRF eligible. We talked about it a little bit.
It's not included in our current.
Yeah, my thought would be, I would appreciate it if we could look into that, because if it is fully if it's fully non-refundable, I think is the word I was looking for, then I would prefer we go through the SRF, not have to pay that back and utilize those state dollars that are available and shift that to something else. The other thought well, two other things real quick. I have no issue. I, very much support the investments in, with our, with the sewer, with the emergency response, all of that. And I like doing some things to support small businesses. And I know there were some comments in here about kind of helping more households. I, think it might be worth considering even a small amount of money being directed to help households that may need some repairs and things like that they can't afford. We do have families that were hit hard, and I know businesses were, especially restaurants and other businesses in hospitality, but I think it would be appropriate to have a fund to help households with some challenges they may be facing, and it may not be rent, but even repairs to their home and things like that. And then my last question just regarding this is, I don't see anything around our parks or pathways, and I don't know if there's not an eligible way to do that, but it seems like under the first provision you were talking about, that lost revenues that could go into a pot that is. And I know during COVID, our parks and pathways became like one of only, few things people could utilize and do it safely during the pandemic, and just wonder if we should be looking to invest in what that might look like, maybe on a next segment of pathway, or further improvements in our parks to offer more opportunities outdoors that are safe, pandemic or not.
And Karen, you're next, and I apologize, I didn't see your hand go up first, so.
Oh, it's okay, thank you. First of all, I just want to say, I really thought this was extensive and it was really good. You guys summarize this pretty good. My other question was, under the staff recommendations, is that kind of like a priority listing? Is that kind of what you're looking at? Are you not prioritizing, but these are like the 9 ways we want to try to look at these funds, right? Or allocate these funds?
Well, these are, I guess, staff prioritization, not saying it has to be the final prioritization. These are kind of thinking internally of some of the needs. I mean, obviously, like the wastewater treatment plant, solar array is not necessarily a foremost need in terms of, compared to like fire apparatus that are in daily service, but and something that I know that the board has mentioned as being important to make some investment or move the dial towards some renewable energy. So we included that. So this is an internal, prioritization. But I think for the purposes of kind of the initial discussion, I mean, obviously we have an $80 million wastewater treatment plant upgrade is, probably one of our foremost projects right now. There's under these categories, there's a lot of different things we can do. So it's difficult to slice up those dollars, but we wanted to start somewhere to at least give you something to react to and look at.
I wasn't questioning that. I'm a bottom line upfront type of person, so I like that, these are the top 9 or what we're looking at. I think maybe there's like we can kind of work in some of those, like maybe add or take away for some of those. But also in doing that, can we use grants or awards or anything in conjunction when we use these funds? Like if we wanted to, are there programs or anything like that fall under this listing that we can also use? I wasn't sure about that. I don't know if you understand my question.
I think I understand that you're saying if there's other programs that offer grants, can we use these?
Yes, in conjunction with the funds.
If you have any.
Are you saying for like an example, if we received some type of grant or funding from the federal government for the solar array because it's green infrastructure and wastewater treatment, we would not be able to combine.
Oh, okay. Okay. pretty much it. And then the funds are to be used, what, March 3rd, 2021 through December 31st, 2024, but we have until, what was that period of performance? So what does that mean, like an extra 2 years until it's all used
So
up?
we have to obligate the funds by 2024 and use the funds by 2026.
Okay.
So I believe like obligating, if you define your purpose or say you devote funds to the EDC for facade improvement, that has to be done by 2024, but the funds need to be used by 2026.
Okay, thanks. That was, I just need a clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. I love the list. I think you guys did a stellar job on creating a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there, and they tap into some really great things. I'm really interested in the small business assistance program, like something like LEAP. LEAP is currently offering a Sunrise Grant program for Ingham County. The Ingham County, I think they set aside 11 million for small businesses in Ingham County that operate out of Ingham County for grants from $5,000 to $25,000. And I'm working with LEAP as a partner company. I'm helping them through the NAACP and identifying underrepresented businesses in Ingham County, and we're helping those businesses complete the application process. So I'm knee deep into that. And in fact, I had contacted this week Jeannie Wright with Eaton County to see if Eaton County was going to designate any of their 21 million to do something, and it was probably not. So thought I would just put the ask out there. So I really like seeing that there's something possibly to consider doing something here in Delta Township with a similar program, and LEAP knows how to run it from A to Z, and they're really good with partnering with nonprofits to help you with the process and make it a lot easier to do. The other thing I wanted to share is we're getting 3.5 million, but you get a part of it the first year and a part the second year. Is that correct? Or is
Yes,
that
I believe it's half and half.
half and half?
Yeah.
So I wanted to clarify that. That's my understanding as well. And then the other things just to consider, I know we have a challenge or have been challenged with hiring entry-level staff into the fire department. And I believe that there is some schooling, and so I'm not well-versed in it. There's some program, I think at LCC, that they can go through and get that educational piece and then become eligible for a paramedic, or I don't remember which position it is. So if there's maybe some consideration that can be given to offer some grants towards that, sort of a cadet program, if that's something that can be worked out with the fire department and the unions or whomever involved. But I know that there's been a problem with recruiting people and retaining people in the fire department. So maybe there's a way we can help some entry-level people get into the system, is one of my ideas. And the last one is the parks. I love if there's things we can do with the parks. I know, and I'm gonna say this, and Marcus, I think he's here. I don't know if he's here. It's not really about pickleball, but if there's some way to look at, I think Mount Hope Park, I think there's some plan to make some changes or to add the tennis courts and pickleball courts. If something like that could be considered for Mount Hope Park, that would be great too. That's it. Thank you.
Would the solar array be used to power the water plant? Or is this just an opportunity? Okay, so yeah, so, and it wasn't included in the plan. Was there a reason that it wasn't included originally in the plan?
It was basically, first we wanted to deal with, what we actually needed.
Right.
So the priority was to upgrade and develop the treatment plant. As we got deeper into it, and hey, this may be a really good opportunity to add green.
Sure.
And so we did look into that, but the priority is to, and the emphasis is to utilizing what we actually really need.
Okay, yeah, so I think that that would be a good idea, look into what Andrea said. What I would like to see is a second list if the infrastructure plan passes at the federal level and we get separate funding for these infrastructure type things. What would we do if that money came through? You know, what other projects would we like to fund, you know, like recreation or things like that? So we could take off the solar array and the sewer project and things like that, if additional federal funding comes underneath the federal infrastructure package, if that gets passed. And finally, I would like to ask which categories of our strategic plan each one of these priorities fell under, because I don't see anything that neatly fits into our placemaking, which was a big priority in our strategic plan. You know, bringing arts and cultural events and more festivals and things like that. That was a big thing that we talked about a lot at strategic planning. And we don't have those in front of us yet, but it would be nice to see where each one of these fits into our strategic plan, the 5-10-year plan that we were looking at. Thank you.
Before we get to Andrew's questions, I do want to just as a kind of a housekeeping thing, now that we're live streaming our meetings, anytime that staff gets brought into a discussion, we need you to step up to the podium and speak in the microphone, because you'll both be off camera and you won't get picked up by the mic if you're answering from your chair in the audience. And as a result, the people who are watching at home won't know what you're saying or what's being said. So just moving forward, anytime we have any conversations and staff gets involved in a conversation, just have you move up to the podium for that discussion. Andrea.
So Rick, will you come up to the podium?
Come on down.
Yes.
You.
Thank you. I don't mean to get sidetracked, but I just have a question as you were providing a little more detail about the solar array. Has there been any estimates, would that investment, so that $700,000 investment, would that be sufficient to power the entire plant? And do you have any sense of what the savings are then from that investment annually?
To answer the first part, no, it would not run the entire facility. It would be a small portion of the facility. There was a cap on, and I can't remember the number right off the top of my head, but there is a cap on kilowatts produced before you had to jump to a new threshold. And we would not be able to generate on that site to get above that cap to really operate the facility. So it'd be a small portion. To answer the second part of the cost savings, we haven't gotten there yet just because we're development.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
One more question. I forgot about this. Let's see. Number 7 is expand the EDC Facet Improvement Grants loans. Brian, are most of those requests on Saginaw Highway? And if so, the reason I say this is because we now have the CIA. And so some of that probably could be covered under the CIA if that continues to move forward.
So to answer your first question, they are all on Saginaw because the program was designed basically to focus on the segment from Elmwood to Waverly. So all 4 of our facade grants, which is Tropical Smoothie, Panda Express, Popeyes, Writers Auto, they're all in that area. So it was specifically designed to focus in on that area. So number 1, you could keep it in that area, or you could expand it township wide. Or the CIA could potentially do that, but since at this point, capturing TIF dollars from the entire corridor has not really been on the table, we would not be able to do a facade improvement grant through the CIA unless we captured TIF dollars for the entire corridor. So
which is on the table, right? Or no?
Has not been
It
on the
hasn't been
table
discussed,
to this
okay.
point. I guess it's possible. The only thing that's really been on the table is capturing the TIF growth from the new Delta Crossings development.
Mhm.
When we discussed it before, the potential TIF dollars generated by the whole rest of the corridor.
Minimal.
Roughly, it was roughly $30,000 a year or something like that. But unless you're capturing from an area, you can't do private investment.
Okay, so we would need to keep this carve out here if it's not going to be included in the CIA. TIF.
Likely, if we
Yeah.
wanted to continue to, have that program through the EDC.
Well, I would just say, I like the idea of putting as much as we can in the general fund so that we have the greatest flexibility in spending that. So I do like that as being the first priority for as much as we can use. And my moving beyond that, my only hesitation or concern would be that we recognize that the staff has a lot on their plate right now. So I don't want us to create too many new programs that then have to be designed, put together, administered to pass out that money. So whatever that we do, that we find things we can fold into to where we're not trying to, create new programs that will then have to be administered by our staff. So that would be my only concern, but if we find existing ways to plug things in to make it as easy as possible to spend this money and not end up eating up a lot of staff time and diverting them from things already on our agenda. I think it's a great opportunity to have these resources available to us.
I agree. I think our priority should be put in the general fund. We could carve out any number of these or anything that's not listed here that other board members have mentioned. But this is good food for thought. We were going to be able to noodle on this individually and as a board. And I think what we'll have is some good discussions and consensus as when we bring this up again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, Brian.
I'm sorry, I was just going to respond to a couple of things if I could.
Go
Just, sorry, Mary. I think some of the feedback is very good. I just wanted to address the parks and the pathways and just, we do have many parks grants that are out there, which is why we kind of left some of that out. So we are going to have some pretty significant investment in the next few years in parks projects and that type of thing. And we've been rather successful in grants, not saying we don't have to include some of that in the focus, but just a little background. And then I just wanted to Trustee Brewer, the fire cadet program, we are looking at some things regarding that, but it's a little bit challenging in some of the other municipalities where it's easier to bring somebody on as a firefighter, where here we have all of our full timers are paramedic firefighters. So in paramedic school is it's a full-time gig. So we are looking at different opportunities of bringing on somebody who is maybe just a paramedic and then putting them through fire school. But the shortage really comes at the paramedic level. It's not really firefighters, it's paramedics that we can't find. And that's where the shortage is. The entire country is facing a shortage. COVID did not help because they couldn't push people through. So we have brought on a couple part-timers that have just EMTs and tried to allow them to work part-time till they can finish up their paramedic. But it just putting a fire cadet program is something that we've been looking at, but it's not as easy for us. I know Lansing has a program, but they do hire just firefighters who aren't paramedics, which we have not. Our need is paramedic. 90% of our runs are EMS calls. So we don't have firefighters who are just firefighters waiting for fires. So I just wanted to give a little bit of background to that. Not saying it's a bad idea by any means. We're constantly looking at how do we recruit more employees over there. But it's difficult just because the paramedic program is time consuming.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from anybody? Thanks, Brian. We appreciate that first discussion on that.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Mary, if you had more.
That's okay. I'm good.
No one can cut Mary off.
Oh, you might be surprised.
We will continue now with the agenda, on the revision of the rules of procedure. This was discussed at the last meeting, and we decided to bring it back this evening. So Brian, if you want to walk us through your recommendations once again, we will discuss it.
Just to note, we did include that, well, we omitted the first sentence in subsection 8.2, just so that they weren't conflicting. And then I know that we had 2 board members who couldn't make that meeting. And one of the questions was, what were the other communities doing around us? And really, there's no policy, as the state doesn't have a retention policy for audio or visual media. As long as our meeting minutes are approved, then you can dispose of those. So pretty much no one around us has a policy on retaining audio and video recordings. And then the 2 options that we heard at the last meeting were to retain for 1 year and then to retain for 5 years. So that's pretty much, I think, where we left off on that discussion.
So that's the only issue of decision that needs to be clarified for staff. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much. I mean, Karen was glad to see that we were including the military duty and having her able to participate. And there wasn't much discussion on other sections. That was the major discussion. So.
Now, Karen, though, when you participate, we're going to put your face up on the big screen.
I thought about that. I was like, man, I better look good on the screen.
Dennis and then Beth.
Yeah, obviously the legislature done the carve out for, active military duty soldiers. But, I just personally think that it's narrow in scope. I wish the legislature would actually expand that, because there's all kinds of other scenarios where a board member may not be available and to be excluded from participating, but that's the legislature's role, and I think it's too narrow. But I again maintain that is, I think if anything, this COVID exercise taught me is the value of what we had been talking ever since I was on the board, of somehow allowing our citizens and residents to observe. Unfortunately, they cannot participate, but at least observe meetings and get the context of what the discussions were that led to a decision. And that is the key. And so I can understand, because of the newness of having Zoom meetings recorded and then just make them available, that they haven't circled back and made a policy decision yet. I can understand that. But I don't think we should artificially limit it to 1 year. I think it should be either open-ended, or we could do a significant amount of time, be it 5 years or longer. I just think that's one of the principles and values that I think we all share. And I think it's a no-brainer. So I maintain that we have at least a minimum of 5 years, if not longer.
Other discussion?
I think Mary was first.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Mary.
I disagree in the sense that I don't think we need 5 years. I mean, I don't have a issue with retaining them, but I don't see an issue that spills over for 5 years. That I would say a 12-month rotation. So at 12 months, it drops off, not a calendar year drop off, but literally at 12 months. So everything is on for 12 months. I know it makes it a little more difficult for IT, but.
With that section, I was wondering, can we house these on YouTube? I don't know if the township has a YouTube, because then it's not an issue. They just stay out there into perpetuity. Nobody has to monitor. It's been a year. Let's take it off. why not just say that they're placed on YouTube?
Yep, IT has discussed that, and YouTube would be what we would potentially use.
Yeah, so that would be my recommendation, is to just place them on YouTube and not worry about any timeline whatsoever. And then I don't know if we're discussing the other ones on here or we, okay, and I apologize again, I wasn't here last week. So, but I did read through, and if you go, section 2.7, 2.7, I'm scrolling, forgive me. 2.7 talks about the content and order of the agenda shall be as, and it conflicts with 5.2, which includes the public comment. So I don't know if this is supposed to be a complete list under section 2.7, but it is a complete list under 5.2.
I think the 2.7 is statutory.
Okay, because it doesn't say that. So it does not make that
You
distinction.
can clarify that, Brian or Alana, but if you look at the, well, I guess I could look it up. The Township name, or the Charter Township Act, I think it's.
So if it's statutory, I think it should say so. For 2.7.
Because, yeah, that's not the entire list.
No,
anyway,
it is
we have
not.
Public hearings, things like that. and stuff
Right.
that obviously it's not listed.
Right, so that was the first one. And then 5.2 differs from 6.2 in terms of the amount of time that people can speak. So if you look at 5.2, it's changed to 3 minutes. And then if you look at 6.2, it reads a maximum of 5 minutes.
I thought we did to both of them 3.
Well, in one, it does, is recommended 3, but she's pointing to another segment that says it still has 5. Right.
Oh, I thought, sorry, I thought it was the universal we were switching.
So I just didn't know that if that should be the same. Other than that, those were the things that I saw. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to add in before I get to the last question, just so the change on the public comment, one of that's coming about as a result of, I've always felt it was odd. If you look at our agenda, it allows for public comment for items not on the agenda. And then we have public comment at the very end of the meeting, but there really is no place listed on the agenda of commenting on things that are before us that evening. So by just changing that to allow at the beginning of the meeting, somebody can get up and speak on any item, you know.
I love that.
Including things that we are discussing that evening, it gives them the opportunity, because a lot of people don't think they can speak because that first one, and then they don't know to raise their hand when we're discussing it. So that was why that was changed. That was the only reason. And the 3 minutes was just, you know, well, 2's kind of short, so let's give it 3 and not have 5, because, you know, if you have a packed house, you know, it may take 5 minutes, could go on for a little too long. So that was kind of, you know, how we came up with that one. But Beth.
Okay, I'd like to return to 8.2, the record of discussion. I would suggest that we have the word video in this paragraph, so a live video stream recording. Not just a live stream recording, to distinguish it from something that's just audio. And it says available on the township website. Now, I think we should say something about or third-party storage site or something like that. Now, I understand probably what we'll do is we'll host them on YouTube and then have a page on our website that you can, you know, funnel to, but just to be clear that we're not housing them on our website, that would just be a link through. And I agree with Dennis. I think that there's no reason with Dennis and Fonda that there's no reason we can't just save those out there on YouTube in perpetuity. You said that there were no policies for municipalities around here that do it, but what was their practical practice? Did you go and see if they save them forever or?
So I looked around on their website and saw that either they use some sort of website to store them, like Vimeo or YouTube, and how far they went back. I also called them and asked them, well, what's your policy? They said, we don't have a policy.
So that means that they don't have a policy for taking them down either.
Correct.
So did you see some that are like 5 years old, 10 years old?
Yeah, there was, I think, was it Lansing.
At Meridian Township, we found back to 2016.
Okay.
East Lansing to 2019. Lansing, we didn't get any information. Alana mentioned some places like Portland, they were still using VHS tapes. Mason back 2019, so most of these are a couple years, but none of them, as Alana said, really had any specific policy. And I think she mentioned that there's no real state requirement, so it's I don't think a lot of places have put together a written policy for.
So it's possible that these only go back to 2019 or 2016 because that's just when they started doing it. And so it's possible that they have never deleted any, they've just retained everything that they've put up. But without,
It's possible.
yeah, but without any policy to delete them or anything like that. Okay, thank you.
Other comments? Board?
Just one final, if I may. To me, it's a principle of good governance. It really is. And it's not aspiring to achieve the lowest common denominator or what's the minimum required in state law. I think we're better than that. I think we've all strived to do that, and we do that in many other ways. And this is just an easy thing to do. Many communities do it. They really haven't circled back to actually initiate a policy, but their practice is that as of now, they do it in perpetuity. And I just think it's a service for our residents. And I think that we shouldn't even be having any controversy about this at all.
Okay, any other comments on this? Well, I think the consensus is go through and clean, make sure there's no inconsistency, so fix any changes if there's any language difference. And then the recommendation, I guess, is for 1 year. So let's see who on the board supports the recommendation. We can do a show of hands. Who supports the recommendation from staff as it currently is presented to do it for 1 year? I would support it 1 year. So it looks like there's at least 4 people who are supportive of going forward with the recommendation from the staff. So that's what you can prepare and bring back for future action in the next meeting. We appreciate the time and energy. I know that went into all this, and you have to have a talk with that community who are still using the VHS tapes there too. Maybe they could use some of their recovery act funds there to upgrade their equipment.
Can I ask one thing about that, about the decision?
Sure.
Can we include that it's uploaded to YouTube?
I think that Elena said that's how they intend to do it.
It's here, it says website.
We can clean up that language. I would be, our intention is to upload in the YouTube. I would hate to put that into the policy just in case something changes. I mean, at this point, YouTube does not charge or that type of thing, but there's a lot of different, as Lana mentioned, Vimeo, other vehicles for that. So, I mean, we can come up with some language, but I'd hate
like
to.
Andor or, social
party,
media
just
pages.
Yeah.
Third-party storage, something like that.
Yeah, third party. We certainly, I think using a third party and talking with Dave and IT is, advantageous. Trying to host that level of video internally is cumbersome and costly. So using a third party is, but I don't want to be tied into one if we can avoid it, just in case we have to make changes.
Thank you.
Any other? Okay. Well, next we're going to go to a closed session to let everybody know how this is going to work now. We will physically move over across the hallway, at least for this meeting, to have the closed session. Then we'll come back into this room after the closed session is over with. And since we'll be adjourning for a bit, I will take an opportunity for a final public comment first, though. If there's anybody here in the audience who'd like to speak to the board before we go into that closed session, if you want to wait. Sure, come right up, sir. Just state your name and your address for the record.
Sure. My name is Devin Town and I live at 312 Clement Road. I just wanted to say I think I messaged everyone on the board. I just appreciate that all of you guys responded so diligently. breaking that stereotype of local government. Appreciate that. I appreciate, even though I did hear some love for a different chicken joint before the meeting. Won't hold that against you.
I wondered about that.
Praying
When
for
I
you.
heard Popeyes mentioned.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, just, I appreciate that you brought it up. Just for us to review that. I did appreciate all your guys's help and how willing you all were as I reached out to you just to come alongside me and try to figure it out for me. So I do appreciate that. I was curious, I would like to know if there's any way that I can be involved in that process or have residents, community members be involved in that process, or how we can follow along and kind of track how that process is going. Obviously, if this is the forum for that, then that's awesome. And I'd like to know that. But if there's other ways that community members can be involved, I know a lot of business owners that I've talked to do want to see some movement in that. It's my understanding that a lot of communities across the US don't write their own code. They kind of have like one primary source that they copy paste and then amend out of that, kind of depending on the community and what standards they have. I don't know. I saw the stack. I don't know. I highly doubt that anyone here wrote that. And I'd be very impressed if any of you guys read thoroughly through that and like diligently to see what applied to Delta Township. If so, absolutely hats off to you. But I just like to see a lot of what I see as kind of arbitrary or very subjective things in that code. If we could limit that and make it concise, a lot of the infractions that the enforcement officer told us, we had like technically having a Chick-fil-A van out in front of our store parked in our parking lot can be considered a billboard and things like that. Like who would have thought that that's could be an issue. So I would like to have that language cleaned up, maybe half the docket, something so that it's reasonable. No business owner in this community, I guarantee, has read that and like cared to figure out, are we actually up to code? And then it goes back to the enforcement officer discussion that you guys had earlier of like, then you guys are expected to enforce a code that how many of those enforcement officers have gone through and studied that? Like I was a wrestling referee. Like I had to know that book. I can't imagine that they're going through and they know subsection, whatever. So if we could clean that up, shorten it, make it more concise and just make it so that it's reasonable for the business owners or managers to abide by them, it would also make it easier for you guys to enforce that and everything. So yeah, I'm sure that one of you guys will respond to me in email. I don't want to hold up any more time, but I do appreciate all of the responses and interaction we've had so far.
Sure. And to answer your question, you can get suggestions or comments or things you'd like to see changed to Gary in planning at any time, and that can be part of that discussion. But as far as how it gets worked through, it will be at this board. So it will be on future committee, the whole meetings where we will go through whatever recommendations and discussions come back. So that would be the place to be part of that, to bring your input and bring your discussions. I do know you would be surprised that we actually have had quite a few extensive conversations about signs, and signs are a big issue, and it gets thick because if you leave any wiggle room, business will next thing you know have a sign up that we do not want. So you have to be very clear on what you allow, what you don't allow, and when you can have temporary signs and things like that. So we actually have spent a lot of time discussing these types of things to make sure that businesses have the appropriate signage they need, but at the same time we just don't have this blizzard of a bazillion feather banners, a bazillion special of the day signs, a bazillion we're hiring, apply within type signs, everything all the time along Saginaw. So that's why the ordinance exists, but we would love to have your input and the input of other businesses on what works and doesn't work for you as we do a review.
Can I just add a comment? Devin, I just wanted to let you know, I know when you were at the Sign Board of Appeals meeting, Dave Wellagore, I believe, gave you his card, his staff for those meetings. You could send your comments to Dave too. He works with Gary, so
Perfect.
the supervisor, it's all the same department, so that you can submit those to Dave.
Thank you.
And Devin, I wanted to apologize. I said Culver's. I meant to say Chick-fil-A. Listen, I'm hooked on the breakfast biscuit and chicken sandwich.
It's
an
I'm not
enemy
holding
of
it
mine,
against
but
you.
I love it. So thank you. I apologize for saying Culver's instead of Chick-fil-A.
I'll forgive you this time.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
So with any other final public comment? I don't think so. Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Support.
By Fonda, supported by Andrea to go into executive session. Manager or clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Brewer,
Yes.
trustee Cascarilla,
Yes.
trustee Bowen,
Yes.
trustee Mohiska. Clerk is yes, treasurer Fedor,
Yes.
and supervisor Fletcher.
Okay, we are adjourning now to executive session across the hallway.
Some of this it's just. See, you don't want to say.
We're coming back in here, right, Mary?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if there'll be anyone in here, but I guess all the more reason I don't stay here than.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then
I'll do it first.
Matt.
To see.
Oh, God, I gotta go back to the gym. Just kidding. Yeah.
I don't know how it's gonna look. It's something they want to do, I just want to make sure. Look, I want them to say, okay, this is what we want to do, now you do it.
No, I appreciate it. What, did you, so you guys met or whatever, and then,
Yeah, last one.
and then you were like, well, here's some ideas that you can do.
Well, I told them, because they don't know what they want to do, some stuff. Our assistant manager. I said, no, you guys should do that. I said, whoa, whoa. That's a lot of planning, and of course, to be honest, I don't have to.
No, when you first came in and you were like, oh yeah, I let them know stuff of the town, and then you were like, this fall, and I was like. And then you were like, but not us. I was like, okay.
Well, hopefully the kegs. Yeah, no, the kegs, I even get into that. No. Be done. Not fall apart, you know, just make it good. It's a task.
It is.
That's great.
Yeah.
And it may be the.
Well, and then this year, I was like, I don't know how many vendors you got, because I know like everyone's trying to get their stuff in, but then also you have like. You have friends, she's like, "You're recording, so be careful what you discuss." Mary, I know. But yeah, so, you know, it's just hard to get vendors right now because, I mean, not everyone made it through COVID and some people just. Staff. So, I mean, they're being stretched thin too right now. But that's their goal is to do.
They want to do a community.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll attend if they can do it. I'll support them.
I'll support them too. I'll even help them a little bit, but not the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'll see you later.
See ya. Enjoy your evening. What's left of it. I'll announce. No, just. Yeah, I muted you, but then like a second later, you logged off. Yeah. Well, everybody is supporting because, you know, have to. It lets people know. It's because for some reason, you can. Control it, your settings. They automatic. So just turn the volume down. No, I muted you. Okay, that's good.
Okay, we'll reconvene the open meeting of the township board. And we've completed pretty much everything else on our comments. So any final board member comments? Andrew and then Dennis, go ahead, Andrew.
Sorry, I know it's been a long night. Two quick things. One, I just wanted to let the board know, I had requested of Brian in an upcoming board meeting to have Mary from the library and potentially kind of the library board chair come in just to present about the library hours and operations. Now they have opened back up, but I've just heard some concerns from residents in the township about some of the hours of operation. I think that's partly due to limited staff, but I think it'd be really helpful for all of us to be aware of some of those accommodations that have been made as they've opened back up. And just as we're getting questions, I know I have others maybe as well. So I just wanted to share that. And then the other thing I wanted to share, I thought Xavier was going to come to the board meeting tonight. But a week from tonight on Monday, he is doing an event at Sharp Park. And it's, I'm sure he's probably communicated to everyone, but just want to remind everyone that he has his event. I believe it's at 7 p.m. Sorry, at Sharp Park on Monday. So if you're all able to be there.
Better have a short meeting then.
We don't have a meeting.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to inform the board that I had the opportunity to sit on the initial Corridor Improvement Authority Board meeting through their orientation process and all that. And it was nice to see the enthusiasm of a number of those board members. Look forward to our meeting on Thursday with them to further discussion. There was discussion about establishing their bylaws, and in looking at the draft bylaws, I had some concerns regarding that, but I had asked our consultant, Suzanne Schultz, for her documents that she used for reference in putting together those draft bylaws. I do have 2 or 3 concerns that I'm going to communicate with the CIA board, and I just wanted to let the board trustees here know that I was intending to do that.
I just am going to ask that anyone that speaks does not speak for the board, as came back to me that happened at CIA. And I think we have to remember and be careful. And we are all entitled to our personal opinions, but we are not entitled to say the board wants this or the board wants that. And I would urge everyone to remember that and act accordingly so we don't have an ethics violation.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm fully aware of that, Madam Clerk, and I have never gave an impression that I ever speak for the board as a single individual. And my communication with them will be from me as an individual.
Okay.
No. I'd like to hear what your concerns are before we meet on Thursday.
Well, I appreciate that. I can share them, later on, but I think at this juncture, it might be best because that process is before the CIA board, that I should communicate with them. They'll react as the way they want to, and then we'll have that. But I'll certainly share you what my concerns are.
Okay.
Individually.
Any other comment? Okay, we'll see you. No further comments and seeing no further business before us. We got it here.
See you Thursday.
What time is the meeting?